I was drinking black coffee when the first warning came through. Nothing dramatic, no sirens, no explosions, just a cold, mechanical voice on the intercom. Orbital breach. Unidentified incoming objects, 12. At first, we thought it was an error. Earth hadn't seen a full-scale alien threat since the Tranquility Accords were signed 30 years ago. We were supposed to be safe. I remember leaning forward in my seat, the mug still steaming in my hand, eyes fixed on the screen. It showed 12 red dots burning their way toward us at impossible speed. Then the second alert hit. Confirmed. Alien-class weaponry, nuclear-grade payloads, impact in 27 minutes. That's when everything stopped. My name's Reed Ashford, former captain of the Sol Defense Unit, now a washed-up war veteran living in a cabin outside what used to be Colorado. They forced me out after the Ganymede betrayal, blamed me for the casualties, the retreat, the loss of Sector 9. I didn't argue. I was tired, broken, done with Earth's wars. But they weren't done with me. I was halfway to my truck when the ground shook like the planet itself got punched in the gut. Then the comms went dead. Satellites went dark. No news, no orders, just smoke rising from the distance. They'd hit us, hard. 12 cities, gone in less than a minute. New York, Beijing, Cairo, Berlin, São Paulo, Melbourne, Moscow, Lagos, Vancouver, Istanbul, Delhi, London. Millions dead. No warning, no demands, no negotiations. They didn't want surrender. They wanted annihilation. I remember standing on the ridge near my cabin, watching the sky turn black with ash. Somewhere deep inside me, something old and bitter came roaring back. The same fury I'd buried after Ganymede. The same rage I felt when I had to leave my brothers in the trench while command ordered a retreat. It was back now, louder than ever. And I wasn't the only one. Within hours, ex-soldiers like me started crawling out from the shadows. Not for glory, not for orders, for vengeance. That night, a signal went out. Encrypted, ancient military frequency only a handful of us still remembered. It simply said, Project Ashwake, reactivation protocol confirmed. I hadn't heard those words in 15 years. Back then, Ashwake was our last resort black ops plan, reserved for threats we weren't supposed to survive. It involved classified tech, off-the-books weapons, and one chilling directive. If Earth burns, light the sky with fire in return. I got in my old armored rover, buried in ice and dust for over a decade, and drove west. Toward Site 17, a facility so classified not even satellites were allowed to map it. That's where Ashwake was born. And maybe, just maybe, where we'd find a way to hit back. It took 2 days of driving. I passed broken towns, scorched cities, corpses left in the streets like forgotten prayers. Survivors stared blankly from behind cracked glass windows. No one cried anymore. Grief was a luxury they couldn't afford. Only hatred remained now. When I reached the base, it was already open. A dozen men and women stood outside, old uniforms, battle-scarred faces, tired eyes. All of them had the same look, the look of people who'd lost everything and didn't care what it cost to settle the score. We didn't talk much, we didn't have to. Inside, buried deep beneath rock and steel, were the weapons Earth had promised never to use. Hellfire drones, ion warp railguns, antimatter torpedoes, and in the center, still locked under triple-layer DNA seal, was the heart of Project Ashwake, the Exodus engine. They told us it was a prototype warp drive. A weapon, a ship, a war cry, all in one. Built from stolen alien tech and human ingenuity. The catch? It only worked with one pilot, and whoever launched it wouldn't be coming back. As I stood there staring at it, my hand resting on the console, I already knew what I had to do. They fired 12 missiles at Earth. It was time we fired back. I didn't speak when I stepped forward. Didn't ask permission. Didn't wait for anyone to vote. No one in that room expected a vote anyway. They just stepped aside, like they already knew what was coming. I placed my hand on the biometric pad. It pulsed under my skin like a heartbeat. Identity confirmed. Captain Reed Ashford. Project Ashwake authorization granted. The Exodus engine came to life with a low, thunderous hum, the kind of sound that settles into your bones, reminding you you're not meant to be near it. One of the techs, a bald guy with a scar running from his jaw to his collar, nodded grimly. "Once you start it, there's no turning back," he muttered. I looked at him. He looked back. We understood each other without words. Men who've seen too much blood know what silence means. The command room lit up in red. One by one, ancient systems that hadn't activated in over a decade flickered online. Giant monitors showed fragments of Earth's orbit, broken satellites, dead space stations, and alien ships floating like sharks that had already tasted blood. We weren't just at war. We were losing. And no one out there, no alliance, no neighboring galactic council, no pacifist-fueled diplomatic corps was coming to help. Earth was alone. Again. Just like always. I walked the corridor leading to the Exodus chamber, my boots echoing down the steel path. Along the wall were pictures, old black and white shots of Earth's finest, pilots, soldiers, martyrs, people who had given everything when the planet needed them most. I wasn't one of them. Not back then. Maybe not even now. But I had one thing left to give. Inside the chamber, the Exodus engine sat like a god trapped in a coffin. Metallic. Massive. Humming with a kind of power that didn't belong on Earth, or anywhere. The cockpit was small, designed for a single human occupant. The pilot wasn't supposed to last long, just enough to get the payload where it needed to go. But I didn't plan on dying easy. As I climbed in, an old voice crackled through the speaker. General Vaughn. Dead 5 years now. His last recorded message for Ashwake activation. If you're hearing this, it means Earth has been struck, and that diplomacy failed. Again. It means someone believed they could wipe us out without consequence. And now, it's your job to make sure they learn what that costs. The chamber sealed shut. Metal groaned. My spine tingled as the internal systems began to interface with my body. The Exodus engine didn't just fly, it bonded, synced. It turned the pilot into something more, faster reflexes, enhanced awareness, artificial muscle boost, thought speed targeting. They once called it the closest thing to becoming a god. Funny thing is, gods don't feel pain. I did. The neural link burned through my skull like liquid fire. I clenched my teeth, fists trembling as the system dug deep. Memories, instincts, trauma, everything I'd buried. It pulled it out, amplified it, made it part of the machine. It wanted vengeance. Good. So did I. Outside the chamber, the other operatives began launch prep. They knew the protocol. The Exodus would launch through a deep-core rail cannon buried under the Rockies, breaking orbit in under 4 seconds. That's how fast it had to be. The aliens had sensors everywhere. They could sniff a launch from halfway across the solar system. But this time, they'd be too late. The main display inside the cockpit blinked. Target, Zithurian Warbase, Sonine Delta distance, 2.3 light-years, weapon payload, antimatter core. Plus, nanite rift driller mission. Objective, total annihilation. I smiled bitterly. They picked 12 of our cities. I'd return the favor with one of theirs. A voice crackled through the Exodus chamber, this time live. A voice I hadn't heard in over a decade. Reed, you stupid, stubborn bastard, you're really doing this. It was Harlan, my old second-in-command, the only man who stayed behind during the Ganymede retreat. They thought he died there. He didn't. He just disappeared. "Didn't think they'd dig you up for this," he said. I could hear the rasp in his voice. Years of smoke, battlefield burns, and worse. Guess they finally realized what kind of monster they needed. I exhaled. "You here to talk me out of it?" "Hell no. I'm here to tell you where to aim." He uploaded coordinates, secondary structures, shield blind spots, enemy patrol timing. He'd been underground this whole time, spying, mapping, planning, waiting for the moment Earth would need to hit back. And now it had come. The launch countdown began. 30, 29, 28. Harlan spoke again, quieter this time. "They don't think we'll retaliate, Reed. They think we're broken, scattered, weak. That's why they struck without warning. But they forgot who we are." I gritted my teeth, my hands locking into the exo controls. "Yeah," I muttered. "They forgot we never stop fighting. Make 'em remember." The final seconds ticked down. 3, 2, 1. The Exodus launched. It didn't feel like a ship. It felt like being hurled through reality itself. No engine rumble, no inertia, just instant acceleration. The rail cannon below Earth's surface catapulted the vessel out of the atmosphere at velocity so high it tore a hole through the clouds. I blacked out for a moment. When I came to, I was already halfway through the Kuiper Belt, and the enemy saw me. Their patrol ships scrambled, sending drones and interceptors in all directions. But the Exodus wasn't built for dogfights. It was a missile, a warhead wearing armor. I powered through asteroid fields, star debris, even an abandoned Martian outpost that flickered with old distress signals. The Exodus sliced through everything. And still, they came. Zithurians. I'd never seen one up close during my military years, only vague descriptions from black site reports. But now I saw them on the comm feed. Tall, almost insectoid, with eyes like black diamonds and metallic skin that shimmered like oil in water. They weren't just aliens, they were executioners. And they had come to finish what they started. They sent a swarm after me, 67 fighters, 4 cruisers, 1 command carrier, all for 1 ship. That told me they were scared. Good. I activated the Exodus's main cannon. A focused energy lance ripped through their first wave like tissue. I shifted left, the neural sync letting me move with impossible agility. The ship didn't just respond, it anticipated. By the time they surrounded me, I was already behind them. I fired again. 1 cruiser gone. The rest scattered. But not fast enough. I took a hit. A plasma round slammed into the rear engines. Warning lights flared across the cockpit. Internal systems screamed. Something burned in my leg. I didn't even know if it was mine or the ship's anymore. But I kept going. Pain sharpened me, fueled me. The Zithurian warbase came into view, a floating fortress orbiting a red dwarf, shrouded in energy shields and defense platforms. The thing was the size of a moon, crawling with tech and life. The origin point of the 12 missiles, the heart of their campaign. And soon, their grave. I diverted all power to forward shields and activated the nanite rift driller. The ship began to shake violently, not from impact, but from what it was about to become. The driller didn't just destroy matter, it unwound it. It ripped holes in space, allowing the antimatter core to bleed into their reality. They didn't understand the weapon, not yet, but they would. They fired every last defense array at me. Lasers, torpedoes, kinetic slugs. One even tried to hit me with a gravity pulse. I bled from my ears as my brain screamed under the pressure. I was barely conscious, but I saw it. The opening, a shield flicker on the north tower, A weak point in their energy lattice. I aimed, screamed, fired. The Exodus roared like a dying god and tore through the breach, slamming into the base at full velocity. The antimatter core detonated mid-penetration. For a moment, I thought I saw everything. Time folded, space buckled, the stars turned inside out. Then, nothing. Silence. Hours later, Earth's skies changed. The Zethurian ships orbiting our system blinked out. No explosion, no escape, just gone. Harlan's voice came over the planetary comms, broadcast on every channel. This is for New York, for London, for Lagos, for the billions you tried to erase. Humanity doesn't forget. Humanity doesn't forgive. And if you ever come back, he paused. The world held its breath. We won't stop with just one base next time. Back at Site 17, the chamber where I'd launched from remained empty. Silent, a shrine now, they placed a plaque beside the launch rail. Here stood the man who reminded the stars why Earth is never conquered. And they added a quote, one I'd once carved into my old combat knife. You can knock humanity down, but you better hope we stay down, because when we rise, we burn everything. The sky was quiet. Too quiet. Not just on Earth, across every channel, every telescope, every outpost from Titan to the forgotten mines on Eris. The Zethurian fleet had vanished. Not a retreat. Not a surrender. Vanished. It wasn't until day 3 after the Exodus strike that we realized just how far the damage had reached. The antimatter core didn't just destroy Warbase Aero 9 Delta. It ripped it out of reality, erased it from time-space. That entire quadrant of the red dwarf's orbit had become a hole, a void. Nothing existed there anymore. Not debris, not radiation, not even light. And that terrified everyone. Back in Site 17, we waited for the counterattack. It never came, not in an hour, not in a day, not in a week. The alien empire that once launched 12 city killers at Earth now responded with absolute silence. Some called it victory. But I knew better. I sat with Harlan in the ashes of what used to be the upper command deck. Most of it was collapsed from seismic stress after the Exodus launch. Dust and scorched steel surrounded us, like the skeleton of a fallen god. He passed me a flask. I took it, even though I hadn't touched a drink since Ganymede. We didn't say much. We were both thinking the same thing. Where the hell were they? Zethurians didn't just disappear, they weren't cowards. They were executioners, tacticians, precise, brutal, coordinated, and now, nothing, just echoes, dead satellites, empty radio waves. It wasn't peace, it was waiting. The rest of Earth tried to rebuild, sure. The survivors dug through the ruins, dug up bodies, burned the ones they couldn't identify. There were cities with more ash than people, places where entire bloodlines ended in a single flash. We'd won, they said. But every face I saw had the same expression. Numb. Victory didn't feel like this. Meanwhile, new powers were rising from the rubble. Governments had collapsed. Old military chains of command were shredded. What replaced them were survivalist enclaves, ex-military factions, and roving battalions of angry men with nothing left to lose. One of them was mine. I never expected to survive the Exodus launch. But I did. Barely. They found my body floating near the edge of the rift zone, unconscious, fused to the Exodus's half-melted pilot chamber. The ship itself was gone, atomized. They say the nanite casing around my bones kept me alive, or the warp core's last energy pulse somehow shielded me before impact. I didn't care how. I just knew I wasn't the same. The link with the Exodus, it had changed something in me. I could feel it, like my thoughts weren't just mine anymore. Reflexes I never trained for, visions in my sleep of things I couldn't explain. Machines, symbols, star charts. I saw Zethurian networks, silent now, waiting, and I saw others, bigger threats, watching, waiting to see how Earth responded. So I stopped waiting. I gathered who I could. Harlan stayed behind at Site 17. Someone had to keep Earth's last true warbase online. But I took a team, 6 men, all ex-Black Ops, all ghosts from forgotten wars, and we set out to finish what I started. If the Zethurians weren't coming back, we'd go to them. We had stolen drives, warped tech, hybrid weapons, the kind of stuff that made people disappear in black vans if you even whispered their names. We called ourselves the Burn Unit. Because wherever we went, something burned. Our first strike was on one of their old relay moons near Proxima b. Hidden under its icy crust was a listening post, still active, still feeding information into a galactic network. That meant someone was still watching. We took it out. Quietly, cleanly, then we hacked it. And what we found buried inside its memory core? Zethurian command logs, enemy war maps, last known starbase coordinates. But the strangest file wasn't a location. It was a recording, a message. Initiate red threshold. No one knew what that meant, but it had Earth's planetary signature hard-coded into the transmission. They were expecting something. Not surrender, not diplomacy, a trigger. Something we'd do that would unleash the next stage of whatever plan they had. I stared at that file for hours. What if my attack on Warbase 09 was part of their design? What if we didn't cripple them? What if we activated them? No one wanted to hear that theory. Not after what it cost us just to survive the first strike. But I didn't care what they wanted. I only cared what I knew. So I followed the coordinates in the logs. Led the Burn Unit across systems Earth hadn't mapped yet. We hit more of their facilities. Silent ones. Empty ones. Not abandoned. Just vacant. Like the occupants had simply stepped out for a moment. And in every one, we found more human files. Data on Earth. DNA profiles. Psychological warfare logs. Prisoner experiment reports from before the missile strike. They'd been studying us for years, long before the attack. They weren't reacting to us. They were cultivating us, treating Earth like a petri dish, feeding it pressure, war, conflict, waiting for something to evolve. I remember looking at the last file. A genetic prediction. It showed human DNA mutating under extreme stress, violent, vengeful, self-sacrificing, and impossibly adaptive. They weren't trying to wipe us out. They were trying to see if we'd transform. I leaned back in my seat. The stolen Zethurian ship humming quietly around me. My team stared at me, hollow-eyed, waiting for orders. I didn't give any, because I realized something chilling. We didn't scare them because we were strong. We scared them because we were broken. And still came back swinging. We weren't a threat to exterminate. We were a weapon they'd accidentally built. And now they didn't know how to control us. One of my men, Briggs, big guy, hands like wrecking balls, finally spoke what we were all thinking. So what now? I looked at him. Then I looked out the viewport. Toward the stars. Toward the next planet on the list. Now, I said, we show them what their experiment created. Back on Earth, people started whispering about the Revenant. They didn't know it was me. Didn't know the Burn Unit was made of ghosts from their own history books. All they knew was that every time a Zethurian outpost went dark, every time an Empire relay burst into flames, every time an alien warlord's head was found floating in space, hollowed out from the inside, there was one symbol left behind. A scorched Earth. Literally. Carved into steel, painted in blood. Or burned into the hull. We're still here. But the silence couldn't last, and eventually it didn't. On the edge of Sector Null, the black zone where all known signals stop, we got pinged by a massive pulse. Not communication, a warning. Translated through a dozen languages, decrypted by both alien and human systems, it said just one sentence. You have become what we feared, and beneath it, red threshold active. That's when the map changed. 100 new enemy fleets, not just Zithurian, but other species we hadn't even encountered, began moving in formation. Toward Earth, toward us, toward me. I sat there for a long time, hands clenched around the console, jaw tight, rage building. They'd been afraid of what we might become under pressure. And now they were coming to erase us before it got worse. Too late. We were already worse. They just hadn't seen it up close yet. But they would. And this time, Earth wouldn't be the battlefield. We'd bring the war to them. It started with static, the kind of deep-frequency hum that doesn't come through your ears. It burrows into your spine. We were hovering in deep space, cloaked, floating like dead metal near the edge of Sector Null. That's when the signal hit us. Low, trembling, like the universe had taken a breath and was holding it. Briggs leaned over the console. We got movement. No surprise there. The signal wasn't a message, it was a trigger. Red threshold active. That's what it said. And now, it was live. I stared at the nav screen. Red blips, dozens at first, then hundreds, lighting up the map like a blood-drenched constellation. We weren't dealing with the Zithurians alone anymore. They'd called for backup, and the galaxy had answered. Some of the fleets had names we'd never heard before, species never catalogued, ships shaped like bones or crystal, or clouds of shifting data, not military, not political, cleaners, designed to wipe out anomalies. And right now, humanity was the anomaly. We didn't run. Running would have made sense. Tactical retreat, regroup, defend Earth. Maybe even try diplomacy one last time. But we'd already tried all that. And 12 Earth cities still turned to glass. So I told Briggs to prep the cannons. Lucan, our hacker, began cycling through frequency maps to jam enemy comms. Devon and Mace loaded the Rift torpedoes. They were unstable, illegal even by alien standards. You fire one into a ship's hull and it collapses its engine inward, dragging half of space with it. I'd seen one go off once. Nobody speaks after that. And me? I stood at the helm of the stolen Zithurian flagship, modified and rigged with everything the burn unit had salvaged over the last 2 months. We called her the Spinebreaker now. She wasn't pretty, but she could kill. We plotted a course straight into the Onyx Gulf, an area of deep, unstable space just outside the edge of Zithurian territory. That's where most of the incoming fleets were staging. The area was sacred to them. No one went near it. Religious nonsense. I didn't care. It was the perfect ambush point. They wouldn't expect us to hit first. We came in dark. No comms, no transponders. Just silence and speed. The first ship we hit was one of the larger carriers, shaped like a curved fang, with biometal skin that reacted to light. We fired one Rift torpedo. That was enough. It didn't just explode. It folded in on itself, dragging its escorts into the void like paper in a furnace. The rest of the fleet scrambled. They didn't know how many of us were out there. We used their fear like a weapon, hit from behind, struck and vanished. One by one, their ships disappeared from the field. But it wasn't clean. We lost Mace, a beam weapon, something we'd never seen before, cut through the port side like it was tissue. The bridge shook. I remember hearing Mace scream through the comms just before the feed went dead. We tried to pull him out. There wasn't anything left to pull. His death hit Briggs hard. Those two had fought together since Europa. I didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. We weren't soldiers anymore. We were revenants. And Mace's death only made us meaner. After the fourth skirmish, Lucan cracked part of their fleet protocols. Turns out these weren't ordinary invasion forces. They were part of something called the Purge Doctrine, a galaxy-wide contingency. If any species demonstrated extreme behavioral deviation, they were flagged for sterilization. Not extermination. Sterilization. That word stuck with me. Like we were an infection they needed to bleach out of existence. The doctrine didn't even mention Earth by name, just numbers, coordinates, probabilities, no culture, no faces, no grief, no fire, just cleansing. That's when I realized they didn't fear us, they feared what we might do to them. See, the Zethurians were cold, calculated, efficient, and the galaxy liked that. It trusted that. But humans? We were chaos in boots. We didn't kill for resources or territory. We killed because we remembered. We killed for people who couldn't fight back. We killed for rage. And when they killed us, when they fired those 12 missiles, they woke up something they never wanted to see again. Briggs caught me staring into space after our fifth hit and run. He was covered in engine grease and burn scars, dragging a dead alien corpse from the cargo bay. "You all right, Cap?" he asked. I shook my head. "No, and I don't want to be." He laughed, bitter, low. "Good. Then we're still fighting." We headed deeper into the Onyx Gulf. The fleet started to thin out, as if even the other species feared getting too close. That's when we found it. A signal. Not artificial. Human. But old. Very old. We traced it to a hollow asteroid near the center of the Onyx region. Hidden inside was a derelict ship, Earth-made, worn down, half-eaten by time and vacuum. The serial number was faded, but I recognized the design. A pre-Accord battleship. One of ours? Long before the 12 missiles. Lucan managed to extract its black box. It had one final entry. A warning. "If you're hearing this, Earth isn't safe anymore. We thought we could trust them, the Zethurians, the Accords, but they've been watching us, prodding, testing. They wanted to see what it would take to break us. I think we gave them their answer. And now they want to bury it." That message was dated 71 years before the first missile struck. My blood ran cold. They'd planned it for decades. We took the ship's data and headed toward their last command hub, Station Ocker 3, deep in the Crimson Reaches. Supposedly unbreachable, shielded, hidden in a gas giant. I didn't care. We'd punched through worse. We slingshotted around the gravity well of the planet, used the static storms as cover, and dropped into the station's blind side. It was massive, more like a floating city than a station. Entire ecosystems on board, alien civilians, admin centers, military wings. But we weren't there to negotiate. We were there to end it. Lucan uploaded a virus into their central command grid. Briggs and Devon handled the explosives. I moved through the halls with my rifle primed, every room flashing with red alarms as their defense systems failed one by one. And then I found it. The Central Archive. A sphere of translucent metal, pulsing with data. Alien language on every surface. I jacked in, and what I found shattered me. Files. Thousands, all about Earth, all about me. They had my DNA on file, my combat logs, my family history. They even had records of my dreams, extracted somehow from neural feedback when I was connected to the Exodus engine. They had studied my vengeance like it was a lab experiment. And worse, they were impressed. They weren't trying to stop us anymore. They were trying to replicate us, use human chaos as a weapon template, build synthetic soldiers that acted like we did, thought like we did, fought with that same gut-born fury. They wanted to take the worst thing Earth ever produced, its grief-hardened, vengeance-fueled broken warriors, and mass-produce them. They were turning Earth into a factory of pain-forged killers. And they wanted to aim us at their enemies. Like we were guns, I destroyed the archive, every last byte, burned the servers, planted charges in the core. Briggs and Devon fought off 3 platoons of alien guards just to hold the breach long enough for our escape. We blew Ocker 3 sky high as we warped out, a fireball blooming behind us like a dying sun. And still, it didn't feel like a win. We were halfway back to Earth when Harlan finally contacted us. He'd found something worse. Back at Site 17, the deep system scanners picked up a structure forming at the edge of our solar system, beyond Pluto, beyond the Kuiper Belt, something that wasn't there yesterday. A wormhole gate, one of theirs. And it was opening. They built it in silence. The gate, no warnings, no signals, just black space, folding into itself, like the universe grew a mouth where Pluto used to be. And now it was grinning. It floated there like a halo of death. Spinning, humming. Slow at first. Then louder, that sound again. The same one we heard in Sector Null. The kind of frequency that didn't travel through speakers. It just entered your bones and waited. This wasn't an invasion gate. It wasn't a station. It was a terminal. One way in. Nothing out. Lucan stared at the scans from Site 17 and muttered, "They didn't build that here. They brought it." He was right. The structure wasn't anchored to anything in this system. No orbit, no gravitational signature. They'd warped it straight from whatever blackened corner of the galaxy birthed it. Briggs stepped into the command deck of the Spinebreaker, armor scuffed, eyes bloodshot. "If they're building that," he said, "they're not coming to fight." I already knew what he meant. They weren't coming to conquer. They were coming to end us. Back on Earth, the UN no longer existed. The Accord Council had collapsed a month earlier. What rose in its place was a temporary global coalition, made up of what little was left. They called it Iron Earth. It wasn't led by politicians or peacekeepers. It was led by survivors, veterans, scientists who once built peace technology, now converting it into war machines, soldiers who'd watched their homes turned to ash, and every single one of them was done waiting. I landed the Spinebreaker at Site 17 under heavy blackout protocol. Didn't even shut the engines off. There was no time. Harlan met me at the entrance, pale, skinnier than the last time I saw him, but his eyes were still hard as bullets. He didn't say, "Welcome back." He just handed me a data drive. We found their next step. We went underground down to the Omega lab, hidden under the scorched mountain ranges. They'd uncovered old Zithurian logs in the ruins of Ocker 3 before I burned it to hell. Harlan plugged it in. The screen flickered. Alien text flooded the display. The translation was slow, broken, but it didn't need to be perfect, because the file was a blueprint, not of weapons, not of ships, but of Earth. Mapped, layered, divided, from the tectonic plates to the magnetic core. "They're not just coming to wipe us out," Harlan said. "They want to fracture the planet, literally, shatter it, reduce Earth to debris, and study the fallout over the next few centuries." I clenched my fists. My breath came slow. They want to watch us die in pieces. But that wasn't the worst part. The drive also held biometric tagging data. They'd been recording our neurological changes since the Exodus engine's activation. They knew what it did to me, to my blood, to my mind. They wanted that too. They weren't just afraid of us anymore. They were obsessed. We'd become a paradox to them, something too dangerous to kill and too valuable to leave alive, so they chose both. Kill Earth, keep the DNA, extract the rage, rebuild the weapon, point it somewhere else. Harlan led me deeper into the lab, past the cryovaults, past the old warhead cages, all the way to the end, where the room went cold and the lights dimmed automatically. That's where I saw it. The second Exodus engine, a prototype, stronger, smarter, angrier. He looked at me, face stone flat. This time you're not going alone. 3 other operatives stood behind me. Briggs, Devon, and Lucan. Each one of them had survived the impossible. Each one of them had lost everything. And now each one would be connected to an Exodus variant, forged in the ashes of the first strike, upgraded with stolen alien tech, and programmed with one objective: burn the gate. We weren't stopping the invasion. We were cutting off the head before the snake entered the house. Iron Earth launched what they called Operation Floodgate. No debates, no speeches, no press, just payload and purpose. We loaded the 4 Exodus units into deep-range rail pods, this time not from Site 17, but from 4 locations across the planet, hidden in the remains of once proud cities. Detroit, Shanghai, Johannesburg, Belfast, cities that had burned once. Now, they'd light the sky again. As I climbed into the cockpit of Exodus Unit 2, Hammerlight, I felt the old sting hit again. The neural hooks, the spinal plugins, the way the machine didn't ask you who you were, it showed you. My past, Ganymede, the trench, the bodies, my failure. Then, the 12 cities, the silence afterward. Mace, the gate. All of it flashed behind my eyes in less than a second, then disappeared into the circuitry. The Exodus wasn't just built for war, it was built to become war. And I was ready. The launch nearly tore the atmosphere apart. I could feel it in my ribs, the way the Earth cried one last time before letting us go. The Exodus pods screamed into space, carving their own temporary wormholes around the upper ionosphere. I watched the sky go from blue to black in 2 breaths, and then the gate came into view. It was massive now, spanning entire moons, pulsing, breathing, alive. Thousands of alien ships floated around it, not in defense, but in ritual, like they were there to witness the end. A cosmic funeral pyre, with Earth as the body. We weren't invited. But we showed up anyway. The burn unit struck first. Briggs' pod came in hot, crashing through 3 cruisers like a goddamn meteor. His Exodus, a brute frame named Deadspur, activated its magnetic claw array and tore the enemy apart like wet cloth. Devon followed, his unit moving like a shadow, fast, surgical. Wraith Song. He sliced through their field commanders before they could even issue countermeasures. Lucan hacked the outer command web, blacking out the gate's shielding long enough for me to slip inside. That's where I saw the core. A swirling vortex of red-blue energy, not tech, not entirely. It was living, sentient. It responded to me, reaching out like it could smell the blood on my soul. I didn't flinch. "This is for Earth," I said. Then I fired the rift drill. The gate reacted instantly. Tendrils of black matter lashed out. Whole fleets turned toward me. The void pulsed with psychic static, like something ancient had just woken up and it was angry. The core cracked, but not enough. So I aimed again, and fired. The second shot went deeper, breaching whatever field was holding the gate open. The ships started to retreat. I watched them warp away like cowards, but not all of them. Some turned inward, toward the gate. They weren't retreating, they were feeding it. Lucan screamed through the comms. "Reed, get out! It's collapsing into a singularity!" Briggs roared. "We hold the line!" Devon, "We go down or they do." I gritted my teeth and pushed the hammerlight forward. The core surged. A final pulse like a dying star. Then, white, blinding, endless. I woke up days later, orbiting Earth, or what was left of it. The gate was gone. But so was most of our fleet. Iron Earth said we'd stopped the annihilation. They called it a miracle. But all I could think about was how the gate tried to speak to me, not in words, in emotion. And it wasn't hate. It was fear. I was in orbit when Earth finally called me back. Not the governments, not what was left of them. Earth itself. The neural mesh inside the Exodus unit kept my vitals stable. But I knew I was dying. Some internal organ, maybe two, had liquefied during the gate collapse. My lungs worked on override. The ship was running diagnostics and cycling damage reports. But they were meaningless. You don't walk away from a direct shot into a singularity. You crawl, and I wasn't the only one. Lucan was gone. His Exodus was pulled in completely. No signal, no remains, just one final transmission that cut off mid-sentence. Devon's pod had broken apart during extraction. We found his body floating in orbit, still clutching the manual trigger of his onboard nuke, smiling like a man who knew he'd finished his mission. Briggs was still alive. Barely. His voice cracked through my comms, full of smoke and steel. They saw it, Reed. All of them. That we'd rather burn with the enemy than bow. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. My fingers twitched. My suit injected another hit of neurostims to keep me awake. It wasn't a fight, I said. It was a warning. Because it wasn't just the gate we destroyed. It was the idea that humans were prey, that we could be cataloged, predicted, controlled. They studied us like lab rats. And now they understood the rats had learned to bite back. I was grounded for 6 days after re-entry. The hammerlight was placed into cold vault storage under Site 17's deepest hangar. Engineers stared at it like it was holy. They didn't understand what the machine had become in that final charge. It wasn't a weapon anymore. It was a message. Harlan met me outside the medbay. He hadn't slept in 2 days, judging by the rings under his eyes. "You're a goddamn legend now," he said. I didn't answer. He kept talking. "The fleet's gone. Every species that backed the Purge protocol vanished from the system. No retaliation, no diplomacy. They've gone quiet, Reed. Dead quiet." I looked at him. Slowly. "Not out of mercy." "No," he agreed. "Out of fear." The war was over, or so they said. The public believed it. Most did. Across Earth's broken cities, people began rebuilding again, brick by brick, tower by tower. There were no parades, no victory speeches, just silence. And that silence was louder than the missiles ever were. But I didn't go back to civilian life. Couldn't. I'd changed. Everyone in the burn unit had, those that lived. We weren't soldiers anymore. We weren't even men. We were the reason the stars grew quiet. So Iron Earth gave us a new directive. Something off the books. Darker than anything the UN ever tried to hide. It was called Project Rainfall. The premise was simple. We'd survived extermination. Humanity had proven it couldn't be culled, pacified, or broken. Now it was time to explore what came after survival. Power, dominance, control. They called it peace. But peace didn't interest me anymore. Because peace was what we tried before the missiles came. I sat in the war chamber under Site 17's core vault, reviewing what little data we'd gathered on the wider galactic councils. So many species had aligned under the Zithurians during the Purge attempt. Species that pretended neutrality for decades, then handed them our coordinates the moment it suited them. Some of them were still close, still watching, still waiting for the signal to try again. I wasn't going to let them. And neither was Briggs. He leaned over the projection map, pointing at a small, unclaimed solar system in the Arclon Drift. That's our next move. Resources? I asked. Minimal. Tactical value? None. Then why? He looked at me with that burned-down look only a survivor can wear. Because it's close to the Vorta coalition, and they're watching us. The Vorta were one of the quiet ones during the Purge. Didn't attack. Didn't defend. Just observed. Watched Earth get hit, then vanish behind their borders. Cowards, or worse, opportunists. They wanted to see which way the wind blew before they picked a side. We were about to give them a storm. The burn unit operated under a new designation now, Black Sun Task Force. Still off-grid, still underground, but now with full authorization from Iron Earth to run preemptive operations. That's what they called it in the files. But we knew what it was. Retaliation. We hit the Arclon Drift 3 weeks later. No warning, no diplomacy. We touched down on the largest moon, set up a forward base in less than 12 hours, and broadcast one signal across all galactic frequencies. This system is now under Earth jurisdiction. Trespass and be treated as hostile. There will be no second warning. Within a day, 3 Vorta reconnaissance ships entered orbit. We shot them down. Didn't ask questions. Didn't even scan their transponders, because we didn't care. That's when it started. The shift. Galactic factions began to meet in secret, whisper about Earth's aggression, our unforgiving response to trespass. They called us unstable, violent, dangerous, good. Let them. We weren't here to belong anymore. We were here to remind the stars that if you hurt Earth, you'd never stop bleeding. But something else started happening too. Whispers, not about Earth, about me. They started calling me the First Flame, the man who destroyed the gate, who survived the Exodus engine. Twice. Who stared into a singularity and came back with hell in his blood. Alien diplomats would bring my name into council meetings like it was a curse, as if I were a weapon Earth could launch at will. But what they didn't understand is, I wasn't Earth's weapon. Earth was mine. Harlan called me one night. Encrypted channel, only one frequency. They're building another gate, he said. I didn't respond. Far side of the Morian Divide. Quiet system. No colonization record. But they're doing it again. I leaned back in my seat, feeling the edge of old fire stir inside my chest. Then we burn it first. You can't do this forever, Reed, Harlan said after a pause. I could hear it in his voice. He'd watched me walk this path long enough to know where it led. And maybe he was right. But I didn't care. Because I remembered the ash, the screaming, the millions. And I knew something deep, something brutal, something no peacekeeper or politician would ever admit. Vengeance is more reliable than mercy. The new Exodus unit was already prepped. Faster, cleaner, deadlier. They called it Gravemind. No pilot restrictions, no fail-safe mechanisms. Just a cockpit, a trigger, and one instruction. End the threat. Briggs volunteered to fly it. I told him no. This one was mine. And this time, I wasn't going up to die. I was going up to be remembered. They didn't come in silence this time. They came with flags, envoys, artificial voices tuned to mimic calm, ships painted with peace insignias, and eyes that never blinked. The Galactic Accord Council had returned, the same so-called coalition that stood back when Earth burned. The same collection of species that condemned the Zethurian missiles after the fact, after 12 cities were ash and bone. Now, they wanted to talk. Now they were afraid. And I made sure they stayed that way. I stood in the open-air command platform of Outpost Valkyr, deep in the Arclon Drift. The air was thin, cold, unfiltered, just how I liked it. The sky above me was filled with the black hulls of Earth's new fleet. Not diplomats, not explorers, soldiers. Briggs stood next to me, his arms crossed, his beard streaked with gray from radiation exposure. The scars across his face never fully healed from the gate detonation, but he wore them like armor now. "They're trying to bait you," he said. "Let 'em," I replied. The envoy ship landed in the far crater. Not close, not stupid enough to walk right up to us. They sent down 3 representatives. One was from the Vorta coalition, the same bastards who stayed neutral during our extermination. The other was a Jarathi. Their eyes shimmer like oil, always calculating. The last was a synthetic diplomat from the Unity Hive, a machine culture that had always treated humans like unstable code. They approached slow, cautious. I didn't meet them halfway. I made them walk. The lead envoy, Vorta, had a voice like wind chimes dipped in syrup, artificially soothing, too smooth to be honest. "Captain Reed Ashford." "It's Commander now," I corrected, "of Earth's Outer Dominance Command." He hesitated. Small, but I caught it. They hadn't expected us to create an entire command hierarchy outside the home system. "We're here on behalf of the Galactic Accord to discuss de-escalation." I cut him off. "You should have de-escalated when Earth was glowing." The Jarathi tilted her head, voice buzzing through her translator box. "We regret the inaction of our council during the Purge event. It was a failure of judgment." Briggs snorted. "Yeah? Regret's cheap. Cities ain't." I let them talk. Let them offer treaties, economic alliances, reconstruction credits. I let them show me that their governments were scared now, not of humanity's anger, but of our refusal to stay under their heel. Then I walked away. Didn't say yes, didn't say no, just left them standing in the dust. Because that was the new law. Earth doesn't explain itself anymore. 3 weeks later, they tried again. This time with threats, back-channel messages, warnings, even a blockade attempt on our new Mars-based relay hub. Didn't matter. We broke it in 2 hours. No warning shots. Just a single comm burst from Outpost Valkyr. "You thought we were the victims. You should have realized we were the fuse." That's when they sent Sithrix, a name I remembered from old military blacklists. A war broker, a galactic-level mercenary commander, paid in blood and resources, never took sides, just took wars and flipped them. He was no envoy. He was the hammer they sent when diplomacy failed, and Earth had made diplomacy irrelevant. He arrived on a dreadnought the size of an asteroid. No symbols, no flags, just black metal and silence. Parked it on the edge of our territory like a challenge. I accepted. Took the Gravemind myself and flew out to meet him, face to face, not on equal terms, on my terms. The Gravemind wasn't just a weapon now. It had evolved. The singularity we triggered during the gate collapse had altered its core. It pulsed with unstable energy. The neural link between me and the cockpit was almost biological now. I wasn't just piloting it. It was feeding off me, and I was feeding off it. I opened comms. Sithrix appeared on the screen, half flesh, half alloy. A creature shaped by war and forged in betrayal. His face looked like he'd chewed through a minefield and survived. "You've made a lot of enemies, Ashford." "I made sure they stayed dead." He smirked. "This isn't a war you win. This is where they erase you before you infect the galaxy with your madness." "You think this is madness?" I asked. Then I turned the camera so he could see Earth behind me, burned, bloodied, but still standing. This is what survival looks like when you don't have the luxury of rules. He ended the call, fired the first shot. The battle lasted 7 hours. One dreadnought, one grave mind, and the galaxy watched. We fought across moons, through asteroid fields, across the rim of collapsing stars. My ship was torn open 3 times, but Gravemind sealed itself with living metal. His dreadnought fired pulse nukes. I answered with rift singularity shells. It was hell. It was glory. And in the end, I killed him with a rail spike made from the Exodus engine's original shard, the very tech they used to build the first gate. Poetic, in a way. His ship detonated behind me. The galaxy blinked, and Earth roared. The aftermath was unlike anything I'd seen. Systems began falling under Earth's shadow voluntarily. Species once aligned with the Accord Council started requesting Earth protection. Not because they liked us, because they believed in us. Because they'd seen what happened when Earth bled, and how we bled back harder. The Purge Protocol wasn't mentioned again, and the word human was no longer whispered with pity. Now, it was dread. But not all were afraid. Some watched from deeper in the void. Unaligned species, old powers, ancient empires that didn't care when Earth burned, because they thought we were temporary. They were wrong. And I had one last message to send. A beacon, not a warning. A challenge. We broadcast it from all of Earth's outposts, on every frequency, in every language we'd cracked from our enemies' tongues. To those watching from the dark, we are not your prey. We are not your experiment. We are not your mistake to fix. You fired 12 missiles at Earth. We answered with extinction. If you come again, we won't just end your war, we'll end you. You don't win wars like this. Not the kind that leave cities in craters and names erased from family lines. Not the kind where vengeance burns hotter than survival. You just outlast them. And Earth had outlasted everything. The Purge Protocol was dead. The Accord Council dissolved in less than a month. Species that had once looked at us like primitives now watched their own skies like hunted prey. We weren't a galactic anomaly anymore. We were the new constant, and the stars knew it. I was standing in the ruins of what used to be Central Command, just outside the old Manhattan exclusion zone. You couldn't call it New York anymore, just Crater 3. They never rebuilt here, didn't try. No gravlifts, no nanodrones, just stone, burnt air, bone, and silence. That's why I came. To remember. Harlan arrived on the 3rd day, worn down, older, still sharp, still loyal. He didn't say anything for a long time, just stood beside me as the wind whipped dust around our boots. The wind here didn't carry voices anymore, just ghosts. "It's done," he finally said. "No," I replied. "It's never done." Earth had changed. You could see it in the way people walked, heads up, eyes hard, no longer looking for pity or permission. You could see it in the way off-worlders treated us, no longer smug, no longer amused. Now they watched their words, watched our movements, watched the sky for black ships that might descend without warning. Because Earth had made it clear, no more mercy, no more treaties, only memory and fire. The Black Sun Task Force had grown, no longer 5 ghosts in a rogue dropship. We were now Earth's forward blade, a whole command structure with embedded fire teams, war engineers, planetary reclaimers. The galaxy called us warmongers. We called it justice delayed. We struck without apology. We answered threats before they matured. We didn't wait for missiles anymore. We found the whispers. We burned the roots. Then we salted the ground behind us. Briggs ran most of the field ops now. He'd lost his right leg during the final strike on the synthetic farms of the Gen Triad. They were breeding hybrids using human DNA harvested before the Gate Wars. He took a reaver blade to the knee and kept fighting another 4 hours before the medics dragged him out. They offered him prosthetics. He refused, said the pain made him sharper. I stopped piloting after the Gravemind. The neural bond had fused with something inside me, or replaced it. I could still feel its hum in my skull, like a forgotten storm waiting in the dark. But I didn't need it anymore, because now my name flew faster than any ship. I'd become a symbol. The first flame, the Black Phoenix, the man who bled the gate. Didn't matter what they called me, because I knew what I was. The reason Earth was feared. And yet, even fear fades. The galaxy is a patient beast. It forgets, slowly, always. The wounds we carved into its bones were beginning to scar over. New councils were forming. Quietly, secretly. Power brokers, syndicates, private fleets. And worse, they were uniting under a different doctrine. They didn't want to purge Earth anymore. They wanted to contain it. They began carving territories around us, designated no-trade zones, defensive corridors, restricted influence orbits. None of it official, all of it obvious. They wanted to box us in, let us fester inside our own war stories, let time do what their missiles couldn't. Harlan called it containment via isolation. He showed me the map. Circles, red lines, dead zones. It's not war, he said, but it's the start of something worse. I looked at the projections, felt the rage swell again. They want us to die quietly, I said. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. So we made a choice. If they wouldn't leave us room to grow, we'd take it. The plan was codenamed Threshold Black. It had been buried deep in old Earth war archives, before the Purge, before the Accords, a theoretical campaign to break containment, seize hyperspace relay hubs, and open Earth's reach to the far sectors. It was bold, reckless, and exactly what they feared. We deployed 9 strike fleets from hidden vaults, each one aimed at a key galactic artery. Some were relay systems, others were trade convoys. One was a wormhole mining structure guarded by 5 alien factions. We didn't negotiate, didn't even announce ourselves. We hit them in 12 hours flat. Every node, every outpost, every gate, gone. And then we broadcast one signal. You wanted to lock the cage. You forgot what happens when the animal breaks the bars. After that, the galaxy changed again. The containment coalition fractured. Some fled. Others joined Earth outright. Entire species began defecting, offering us maps, soldiers, resources, not out of loyalty, out of fear that we'd come next. And Earth? We grew. We colonized the dark corners they thought we couldn't reach. We built fortresses on moons that didn't have names. We turned the shadows into our home. And still, something lingered. A signal. Faint. Old. Buried under the wreckage of the first gate detonation. Lucan had flagged it in his last days. Said it wasn't alien, not fully. Said it sounded human. I never told Harlan. Never told Briggs. Some truths you carry alone. Because when I traced it, across dying stars and ghost systems, I found the last thing I ever expected. A relay station. Small, ancient, and inside, a single recording. My voice. If you're hearing this, it means Earth survived. It means we burned the ones who tried to erase us. And now we stand in the ashes, unbroken. I don't remember ever recording it. But it was me. And it ended with one sentence I'd never said aloud. Let them fear the fire, because we are what waits when the stars go dark. Now I sit where it all began. In the mountain tomb of Site 17, alone, the last mission completed, the war over, the galaxy broken and reshaped under our breath. People call it peace now, but not the kind they used to talk about. This peace has a cost. Its bones are made of rage, and its currency is blood. I light a cigarette, stare out the reinforced window at the Earth I saved. Scarred, battle-worn, but free. They fired 12 missiles at us. They thought we'd fall, but we became something else. We became the vengeance they couldn't kill, the flame they couldn't bury, the darkness they should have never provoked. And when I finally sleep, I dream not of war, but of silence, the kind that comes after you've burned every name they gave you, and you build a new one from ash.